The nicest stage I've ever seen.
So you're wearing a sweatpants?
Yeah, it's not on purpose. I almost wear exclusively sweatpants now. I wonder if that's psychologically relevant to that film. It's funny, as a kid I did wear sweatpants all the time, and Ryan Gahuli really did in the arcade tell me they were out. And it did have a huge impact on me. I don't remember the line in the film, but do I say that they're Ninja Teddy sweatpants? I do say that? Okay, then never mind. I can't reveal anything to you. But back then it was called the Price Club. I think now it's called Costco. And that's where my mom would buy in bulk, full body Ninja Teddy sweatsuits that I wore right up to, I guess it was grade 6 or 7, until I got the news that they were out. And this was a profound moment for me. Because one of the things, I was thinking about this right before we came in, but one of the things that's true, certainly of me, but the whole team that made this movie, of which there are really only 5 of us, and they're all here. There's Owen, myself, Evan Morgan, Jared Rabb, and Matt Miller. When I say that's it, I mean those are the only people who had more or less anything to do with the movie. Like, that's the entire crew. All of us were a little bit socially delayed. And so when Owen and I are in this movie pretending to be in high school, if we're being real, we probably are at pretty close to the same maturity level as a lot of those high school students. And so I think that's one of the reasons we were able to do it. And that Ninja Teddy story is a good example of that. Of just not quite getting, well, what do you mean? What's wrong with these Ninja Teddy sweatpants? Aren't these like just totally great? My mom thinks they're good. Yeah. Is that your question?
I mean, it is now. It was. Thanks. You're making this super easy. So much to discuss. Anyway, what I love about this film is how layered and complex and controlled. Like, I was sitting at the back, and just the cues, the comedy, the laughter, and then the like deep, affecting, social commentary is I think quite a feat, hard to do.
Yeah, let me ask you, what is the social commentary of this film? Because I don't know if to say that there is a profound, deep social commentary in the film. I'm not making fun of you. I know what you're saying. It's funny, but I don't think Owen or I or anybody who made the movie could concisely say what the social commentary of the movie is.
Let me throw it back to you. So tell us about the process in terms of making it and planning it, because it seems to me like it was very highly planned, much like the plot in the film. But
yeah, well, that's the biggest trick that we played on the audience, because we planned nothing. Okay. It was, the process of making this movie was as resonant to watching Matt and Owen make that high school video as it possibly could be. We went out into wherever locations were close to Evan Morgan's house, which is where we shot the entire movie. That's Evan Morgan's parents' basement. They let us stay there, decked out with those posters on the wall for 18 months or something, and they were so proud of us for the first 2 months. They were like, oh, they're making a movie, this is amazing, look at it, isn't it incredible? And then I think by month 10, they were like, Evan, you have to get them out.
From what I recall, that's why we finished the movie.
We finished the movie because we were getting
calling
thrown out.
It was like, we have to finish this movie because my parents are renovating the basement.
That was our oh, right, they renovated the basement. Exactly, that's what ended our production schedule. That's the truth, because one of the things is we had a lot of energy for doing things at once. So when Jared was like, I've got this amazing idea for how we set up their room, which is funny because it's not a bedroom, it's kind of like just a hangout room. And Jared is really the mastermind behind the design of that, with the comics, magic cards, and posters. And we spent probably a day and a half. Jared, do you remember how long we did that for? Was it 2 days?
No, we went.
Yeah. I think it was, but what I'm saying is it was not a lot of... Go ahead.
No, we went for a weekend to like dress the set.
Yeah, and then once we did it, we were like, that was so much work we could never do it again. Not at all realizing it only took us 2 days. The Morgans could have taken it all down, renovated the basement, we could have put it back up. That's just not how we did things.
You know what else was funny about it? I remember that we were so worried then about the legal ramifications of all the references in the movie and everything like that.
All the titles.
Yeah, that all of the graffiti and stuff on the wall and all the drawings on the titles was done because we thought that there would be a world where the movie could only be ever sold if we had put graffiti all over the...
So stupid.
It's just like added our originality.
And then I remember when we finally did try to clear the movie, the lawyer who did the clearances on it, using something that we didn't even know existed at the time called fair use, was like, okay, the only problem that we have here legally is that you've altered all these posters. Like, fuck! We thought that was the one thing that was going to protect us. But again, another great piece of evidence as to the mindset of us as filmmakers. We really were like high school kids. We're like, oh yeah, isn't there a legal loophole where if we cover up the posters, we're fine? Of course, yeah. I think, and none of us looked it up. It's crazy, we just believed it. One of us said it and the rest of us were like, yep, they're right. And then we went and shot the movie. This is ridiculous. There is a world where if the fair use laws were like maybe 3 or 4 years behind where they were, this movie would never have been released and they would have laughed at us. Like they would have been like, well, what do you want us to do? You made an illegal movie, you idiot. And it really was, and it was only because American fair use law had, for whatever reason, gotten to that point within 5 or 6 years of that time that you were allowed to do that, which was hugely eye-opening for us. And if you watched any of the work that we've done afterwards, we really leaned into it heavily, because as soon as we learned what fair use was and what it did, we tried to incorporate it into our work. And that's a lot of why Operation Avalanche and Nirvana the Band, the show, lean so heavily on references and copywritten material as a place to start story. Because it's so cool what you can do, so long as you're working with a lawyer to do it.
Yeah, but I just don't think that even, it's funny to talk about this now, because that was the big thing that we talked about with this movie all the time when we first made it, whereas now with just the state of the internet, you know? I think the idea that you would base a joke on a joke that somebody else had made, and that might be something that people saw as sort of legally sketchy.
Yeah.
Well, or pushing an envelope in any way is really kind of absurd. You know?
Oh, right now, because everybody does that. Except they do it in a non-commercial form, like memes and videos that people will make just on their own using copywritten material or even copywritten music. Like there's no market for it, so they can do whatever they want. There's no legal recourse. It's still, the filmmaking industry very much follows the rules, especially television. And so you need, it's one of the reasons why most TV shows or independent movies have such brutal soundtracks and have audio, serial, and toasty squares instead of shreddies. It's just because for whatever reason the industry that does all that stuff is so afraid to use these new laws. And I don't know why. I suppose they have a lot to risk. Like if they were to be sued, they'd lose money, but really it's a lot easier than you think. And I think young people are going to lead the way in terms of changing that.
Speaking of, well, I'll get back to that. Tell us about the life of the film. So I wasn't here. Did it get a release in Canada?
Yeah, I think it was. It played at the Lightbox for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
But
it was. I know we went to screenings at the Lightbox. So it screened in Toronto for I think at least 2 weeks in 2013.
In the UK then, and it was actually the surprise hit there. If people were talking about it, we got screened a bit.
Well, we had a really good distributor in the UK, a company called Pulse Films. I'm not sure what they're doing now, but they really, really loved the movie. And they did a huge marketing campaign that I guess nobody here would have seen, but they were marketing the movie in such a bizarre way. They were trying to, man, this is so, is anybody recording this? If you are, please stop recording. They were trying to market the movie as a real feel-good buddy comedy. And I remember being over there and seeing the marketing plan that they'd laid out and being like, oh my God, well, I'm just a kid, so I guess you know what you're doing. And thinking people are just have no idea. They're trying to market it as almost like a Judd Apatow style comedy, which is crazy in my opinion, but I'm happy to hear that you saw it over there.
And so can you explain the Kevin Smith connection? I mean, probably many people here know it, but just for those who don't.
Yeah, it's as simple as the world premiere of this film was at a festival called Slam Dance, which happens at the same time as Sundance in Utah. And that screening just went really well, and a lot of people that were at the festival were talking about it. And one of those people who was at the world premiere, Slam Dance is a funny film festival, if you've never heard of it before. They screen the movies in almost a conference room where only about 100 people can sit down. And it's if we had known this is what it was like, we would not have gone. It was a crazy small screening. But what's funny is that if any movie gets any buzz, Paranormal Activity had their world premiere there, and it was it blew up because of it. But it's only however many people they can fit in this tiny room. And one of the people that was in that room was, I think, Kevin Smith's assistant. It was a woman who worked for him, and then she said, oh, you have to see this movie, and then I guess he'd seen a link and then just offered to buy the movie. And at that time he had a distribution company with a Canadian company called Phase 4. And so they released the movie, and then he did a ton to support it. I remember he brought us to Comic-Con that year when he used to do these big panels at Hall H. Maybe he still does those, I'm not sure. And he did whatever he could to try to push it. And I think he was trying to release other movies as well, but then that whole platform sort of disappeared. But he was unbelievably generous in trying to help this movie. I think he was going through a phase in his life where he was trying to help young filmmakers. Yeah, I got that sense. I think because one of his movies had just done really badly, and he thought, I'm going to try to regain the public goodwill with charity, basically, and we were the recipients of that. I can't think of another film he released that he was giving this much attention to. And then he was so nice that he then came and did a cameo in our television series later, which again, he just did. We sort of tricked him and ambushed him after his screening, but he was totally cool about it.
It's lucky. And nice, both. Just before we throw it out to the audience, can you say more then about like Owen 2? Like, what was the process if unscripted? And you were just filming as you do across the other films and the show. You know, you just unannounced, right? And no one knew or cared. But what was like? Was there any kind of planning? Like, what was the process?
So from my perspective. I'm not in film at all. I'm not an actor. I'm not a filmmaker. I've done this because these guys were nice enough to I don't know, invite me into it basically, and we're friends.
No, you're a huge talent.
But I don't.
Please, nice enough. We were lucky.
Thanks, man. So what I think I can offer the perspective of sort of walking in and thinking, I wonder what it's like to make a movie. These guys are trained, and you know they went to film school and they know something. And here's how the process really went. Evan told Matt that we had similar voices and that we would maybe get along, and so that he should ask me if I could be the other guy in the movie.
This is after we were looking for months to try to find out who would be the other guy in this film.
And so then we met, and Matt was like, "Don't worry, Owen, it's great. Like you've got the part. I mean, we just need somebody." And I didn't understand. Didn't know you, and so I thought that was true, and that I had the part, and everything was fine. And in the end, it was true.
What do you mean?
And in the end, it was true. I didn't understand. I was like the 101st person that you'd auditioned, and I remember you filming me in Jared's kitchen, and you were just like, "Just act naturally. It's fine. We're just going to see what this looks like later." And it's like, "What do you want me to do?" And you're like, "Make a sandwich," and things like that. And then I think you liked that enough that you helped me get the job at the Ontario Science Centre.
Yes.
And so then he got me a job at the Science
Probably
Centre.
sounds very bizarre to all of you. I did that because that's where I worked at the time. I didn't say, and now your acting training begins. You will become a host at the Ontario Science Centre, just like all the great actors in Canada have done. I worked there, and I thought this would be a great place for us to like get into trouble. Because I knew, if you've ever been to the Science Centre, nobody here has ever worked there, that's for sure. But if you do work there, it's the Wild West. You can do more or less whatever you want, and I thought, oh, this would be a crazy place to have a friend that we could just go get into trouble together, and we did for like 3 or 4 months as prep for the film.
Because I'm generally a nervous rule follower, and I think that plays out pretty well in the movie. And so Matt's not a nervous rule follower, so Matt would be like, why don't you like cut work for an hour, go through this door, and no one will know. And I'd be like, is that really true? And he'd like encourage me to do it, and I wouldn't do it for 3 weeks. And then eventually he'd get me to do it. And then by the end, I'd be like, okay, Matt, like, are we gonna cut the whole day? Like, let's go see a movie. It's gonna be cool. Everything's gonna be fine. And
You actually started pushing it much too far. because I needed to keep working there. You had another job lined up. I hadn't made the Dirties yet, so I was really in a tough spot with this job. I wound up not getting fired, amazingly.
Yeah, you were called at one time the best Ontario Science Centre employee of all time.
Yes, it was.
By my boss told me that about you.
Just so you know, this question was about the filming process
So
of the
Dirties. But that was the filming process, because then we show up on set, and you'd be like put on a lav mic, and we would basically go to a park, and we'd know that the thing that we needed to get that day was honestly sometimes as simple as Matt and Owen bonding in a park, really. And we go, so it's easy to reference, I think, as an example, the first scene of the movie where there's those two kids that approach us in the park, and they're making a movie and we're making a movie too, and it's the intro to the film. But we're just in the park there, and we just thought the park would be kind of fun, and we're sort of running around. Really, it's even weird to say, like sometimes we were just sort of running around, and Jared and Evan were just kind of filming us, and the kids walked up and talked to us, and then we would play out some interesting scenes and things and kind of write down what we had and put it in cue cards up on the board and sort of fit the story together. Obviously the story had a real arc that Matt and Evan had and Josh Bowles had put together over the series of months and years. So it is true that the story was all planned. But the actual experience of filming it, definitely for me, and I think for all of us, was constantly deciding what to do next based on what had just happened, and constantly improvising and discovering things that we would be able to use, and fitting the things together based on what arose. Because I think the best parts of the film for me, looking back watching it, and I get really nostalgic watching it because it was a really amazing time in our lives. The small group of us just being together and being great friends, and all the inside jokes that and memories and just the connection that we had. I think that plays out well in the film because we were becoming friends while making the film, you know? And our friendship was growing while making the film. And then we would have disagreements and tensions and competition and mutual admiration about different sorts of things. And us, but also everyone who was making the film. And it was out of those real moments of friendship and discovery that the pieces that became the story fit together. It's right, like it's a story of friendship, and so the process of making the film was a process of basically becoming friends and learning about our relationships.
There's a Guardian review of it that calls it a big bowl of meta, which I think sums it up quite nicely.
Yeah, and Owen's point plays into that exactly, because I think our strength, none of us, when we set out to make the movie, really, the reason we thought, we could make a movie about kids pretending to make a movie is because when we were really honest with ourselves, we actually didn't know how to make movies very well. And so we thought we can turn that into a strength for us by making the filmmakers the same as us, right? People who don't know anything about movies other than as fans of movies and have no technical experience. And we'd be able to make a movie that we could do better than, if Steven Spielberg was trying to make the Dirties, he wouldn't be able to make it like this because he doesn't know how to not make a movie, right? Which sounds stupid, but for us, it really was cool because it meant that anything that we did was resonant to the abilities of these characters, and that the meta nature of us being friends in real life and having that play out on camera was also really important. It was like, how many ways can we put ourselves in situations where the lived reality for us as real people, like in this theater right now, how could we make this as real as possible in the reality of the film, so that one, we don't have to act because we're not very good actors, two, we don't have to write anything because we're not very good writers, and three, the cameramen are just trying to catch it in a way that seems interesting to them because they have no idea how to film anything, right? And then at every level, you're feeling the reality of those things, which is funny because I think what a lot of young people do, because I meet a lot of young filmmakers, and one of the things that everybody is doing, you may have done this in your own life, is that you're so desperate to pretend to be at some level of mastery, right? You don't want to be seen as a fraud or an amateur or somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and you want to be like the filmmakers you idolize, and so you try to approach that level of skill at that level of mastery. And that's why most of the work made by young people is so humiliatingly bad, because we as audiences, all we see is the gap. All we see is the pretension or the space between where they thought they were or where they wanted to be and where they are. And we had done enough work, all of us collectively as young filmmakers, to realize that we were nowhere near the level of the types of filmmakers that we idolized, but we were at the level of what we were like when we were shooting stupid movies in high school, so we thought, well, let's just make a movie about those people. And then all of a sudden, our level of talent and our vision for what the movie would be would match perfectly. And then every single shot, every single moment would be resonant, including, which is why it was so important to me that Owen would work with me at the Science Center and we would play with, quote unquote bad things, stealing things, skipping out of work, like things that to high school kids are like nuclear level bad, was because I knew that when we started making the movie, that stuff would be there, and you would just feel it and it would feel real. It's the same reason why we shot in real high schools, why we didn't work with any other actors. Anything that we injected into the movie that was like, oh, this is how a professional would do it, would actually make the movie seem worse. And when we realized that, I think we felt like we were in a really good spot. Because all of a sudden we were doing something that we knew only we could do. And it's the kind of thing that nobody could steal from us. And if, let's say that somebody had stumbled on the outline or the script or whatever, I don't even remember what we had for the Dirties, but nobody could have taken this from us, right? Only we could have made this movie. And that's not to say, oh my God, isn't it amazing? Like, only we're smart enough to have made the movie you just watched. No, it's like, this movie literally represents us, and so it's unstealable. And that idea, I think, is one, really catchy for young people trying to do their own work, and also a really great path to get on. Because as soon as you start realizing, oh, in this area or this arena, I have power in terms of controlling story and character, and I can make stuff that works, then you can start expanding that arena into the places where you were idolizing filmmakers who could do real things with cameras and all this other stuff. But you don't want to start there, because again, everybody looks bad when they do it. Yeah, oh, they look horrible. You've seen them, it's brutal.
Alright, I'm gonna open up to the audience. Yeah, if you could just raise your hand and just wait, someone will come. We have one, you don't mind.
You're gonna make them bring the mic? They can probably shout the questions. See, they're so small.
Well, we can try that.
You think?
We can try.
We'll repeat the question. Yeah, it'll be like TIFF. We'll repeat the question. Yes, yes.
Really cool to see you again, Matt.
Haha.
So I thought your film was really cool. Your film process reminded me of Project X one, especially the fact that you never really see your cameraman. I can't help but feel like there's inspirations that if they're not totally cool.
I'll tell you an interesting story about Chronicle. Yes. So this young man in the front, who I've never seen before in my life, and said he's good to see me again. Said that he couldn't help but notice similarities between films of this era that actually both came out in 2012, Project X and Chronicle. Chronicle, if you don't remember it, was like a found footage superhero origin movie. And I will tell you, it was me, Evan, and Matt Miller. Who did we go to see it with? Well, you weren't there, right? You were there too? So we saw the trailer to this movie while we were shooting the Dirties, and we were so afraid. And we were like, oh my God, somebody else made like a found footage movie where the guy becomes a bad boy? Oh no. And so we went to the theater to see it, and at first, I remember the first act of it, it's got such a stupid device where the guy has psychic powers that can control the camera. And so that's how he's shooting himself, with his psychic powers at one point he's got like 55 cameras in it. And you can assume that he's also cutting between the cameras with his psychic powers. But we saw it, and we were really worried, because you gotta remember, at that point we'd shot for maybe 6 months, but we didn't really understand the film that we were making. So it's not that it was influential. In fact, we saw it and we were like, oh my God, this, we have to make sure that we don't commit the same sins that this movie is making. And if you haven't seen the movie, this is going to be totally uninteresting, but what that movie does is sort of midway through, it kind of abandons the conceit of really controlled. The opening shot of that movie is amazing. It's a single camera from this guy filming himself in his bedroom, and his dad is banging on the bedroom door, being like, I'm going to come in there and beat you up. And we were like, oh my God, that's great. But then that's as good as it gets in terms of using the form to make the narrative interesting, and from then on, it does this thing that I truly hate, and I find so despicable with what people think of as found footage movies, which is that it does nothing to exploit the fact that this is being filmed by a real person, and in fact, it's using it so clearly as a way for the production to save money. And I find this so detestable because there's so many opportunities to do interesting things when there's a real human being. When you have Jared behind the camera thinking his own thoughts and shooting it the way that he thinks he should shoot it, right? Like, that's really interesting. And then you can engage as a viewer with the psychology of the person who's presenting the image to you. And so many films, like the ones you just mentioned, don't do that at all. In fact, they're using it just as a device to, one, be kind of catchy because it was sort of, there was a wave of found footage movie that was cresting at this time, but also just to save money and be cheap. And oftentimes they're adding like an artifice to that fakeness to make it still look good or whatever. And so I find them disgusting. So, but really, we all watched it and we were really scared. And I remember the film critic Adam Naiman and his brother were there. Do you remember that, Miller? And we saw them and we were like, oh man, if these guys like this, we're fucked.
Right, next question. There is a gentleman with a microphone, so yeah.
Can you speak to any upcoming projects you're working on, or maybe even like new ideas you've had recently that you're not sure if you're going to put time into?
Yeah, so my new ideas, I'll just, let me think about, just let you know. Here's some of the new ideas I've had since I sat down here. I'll tell you one thing, top secret, never repeat it, that Owen and I are thinking of making a third part of our documentary trilogy, part 3. It's very top secret. I'd say it involves Owen's hair and not in a funny way. Yeah, see, nobody's laughing because I said not in a funny way. And so we're thinking about doing something like that. I'm sure people are wondering where the hell Nirvana the Band Season 3 is, a question that I get asked basically once a week. You're applauding the question? Yeah. So we still don't know where it's gonna screen. It's in an insane legal battle right now. We've shot Season 3 and we're still looking for a place to do it. I will say there may be a screening in Toronto for people who follow the show. We may be doing a screening. Keep that a secret, but it may be coming soon.
Is it gonna be here?
Will it be here? I don't know. What's the seating capacity of this place? We got a lot of crazy.
We've got standing room upstairs.
You'll do standing room?
We can do standing.
Yeah,
you guys
well,
will stand, right? Yeah.
Well, no, you will probably be the people with seats, the people who are here and organized, and the other people who just find out.
Tell everybody, unlike you.
This I know. So anyway, that's the story of that. And you know what? I can't talk about anything else. We're keeping busy. We're keeping busy. Don't worry. We have something new coming out soon.
Any yes? Sorry, just here in the aisle. Yep, there's a microphone there.
Cool. Mic'd up. Hey, I was just wondering how much went into, like, how much pre-planning and how much did you alert people for the actual, like, shooting scene in the high school?
Yeah, I used to pretend that we just went in and shot that. I remember when we were young, at some film festivals I go to, Sarasota Film Festival, these like little film festivals, I'd be like, I'll never forget. I'll tell you a little story. So Sarasota in Florida is a retirement community, okay? I think it's like a circus town, literally. Like some famous, like Barnum or Bailey was born there. And I go to the screening, and it's exclusively like octogenarians. It is like only old people. And I'll never forget walking in. It's a theater about this size, and I walk up and I take the stage, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, he's here!" Like, because they thought I killed those people, and they weren't being funny about it. They were like, "This is disgusting. This is despicable. How could they have this monster in here to talk to us? Well, I'm not going to sit here and watch this. Honey, let's go." And people walked out by the dozen because here I was, the murderer. And I mean that. This really was a true experience. And in those situations where there is a crowd that is, I'm like, oh, maybe I can mess around with these people, I would say things like, oh yeah, they had no idea. We just went in, started shooting. Aren't we the most badass filmmakers? Oh my God. But in truth, that was probably the only planned shoot that we did. Matt Miller, who's the producer, set that up at his old high school, which is, now I forget the name of it.
Thornley? Was that it?
Thornley. And we just went on a Saturday, and if you look carefully, you can tell that Chinese school is in that day, because there are some people who do not know what's going on. But for the most part, those are like high school students that we brought in who knew what they were doing, and we had so little money that I think in total we only shot that take 3 times. It was brutal. It was so hard because it was like, It may seem like nothing, but that whole thing is one take. Even though it's cut up with those GoPros, it actually is just one shot. And we had to do it as one shot because we couldn't afford to break it up. And the guy who was doing like the bullets had, like everything had to be synced up.
Wasn't there a limited number too
Yes.
that he had?
We could only do three.
Of the fake blood?
Of the fake blood that could burst out of those things. And so what you're watching is like a lot of prep on that day. And then we shot the take once. And we were like, okay, we again, in the way we do things, like Owen and I didn't exactly have our lines right. Like we didn't really know how we were going to react because we hadn't done it before. So the first time we did it, we were like, okay, that didn't work, let's try it a different way. The second time there was like a technical problem, like the gunshot didn't go off. And then the third time was what's in the film. And then that's it, and we stopped shooting. It might have been 4 times, but that was extremely controlled. Apart from the Chinese school.
Students. Oh, we have so many in the front. Eager hand here, second row. There you go. Microphone. Thank you.
Very much. Whoa. Matt, Owen, you guys are awesome. The Dirties is great. And Operation Avalanche is also a great movie. Big fan of that. Matt, how long have you had those fucking pants with the cutout knees?
I know. So I first put them on Nirvana the Band web series episode 1, and that was 2006. And this is how stupid I am. We went to go shoot the second episode of the web series, and I was like, oh, I could probably wear the same pants. And then that philosophy carried me right through to today. And it's so brutal because now they haven't been washed pre-2010. Easily, probably even earlier than that. And they're so thin that they're disintegrating constantly. So now when we shoot, I'm like very careful about what I do. And I have a demo, like we had a costume designer on the TV series who I had build me like my stunt pair when I've got to do something dangerous. And so if you look, whenever I have to do something that requires like a lot of physical activity, or I'm jumping out of somewhere, or there's something really dangerous, then the pants are a slightly different color. We try to fix it in the grade, we try to change it later, but yeah, same pants, I still have them. And I'll tell you another crazy story. I moved from apartments, and for whatever stupid reason, I was away, and man, this is one of these stories that makes me seem so pathetic, but I'm just gonna tell it. My mom had gone into my apartment, and if you know my mom, she's the same woman from the movie. She decides what I can keep and what I can't, even at this age. And so she'll see pants like that and be like, Matt, these are ridiculous. And she picked them up and she just threw them in a trash compactor. And I didn't find out that they'd been thrown in the trash compactor until I got home like 2 or 3 days later, looking for the pants, can't find them. I'm like, Mom, when you were at my party, you see some black pants with holes in them? She's like, oh, they were disgusting, I threw them out. And then for like 3 hours, I was in this gigantic trash bin behind this building looking for the pants, and I was like, that's it, it's over. And then I found them. And they have not been washed since that time. For real. Because there's, it's one of those things, it's like me being a stupid child. It's like there's certain things that just have totemic power. Do you know? People will have hats or a little dice or that stupid Leonardo DiCaprio with the spinning top in that movie. Like, certain things, they just have power to you. And you feel like if they're gone, then maybe things will be different. But of course it's ridiculous. I mean, we just made a new show where I'm not wearing those pants. And it was, yeah, I know, but you know what? It would never work. It would never work. When you see the new show, you'll be like, I can see why he's not wearing the pants. Yeah. I play the son of a billionaire in it. And so I'd have to be like very edgy if I was like, the billionaire's son wearing those pants, thinking it was so cool. Matt, in all these other things, wears those pants because he's like, well, these are my pants. What do you mean? Yeah, they got holes in them. I wear them a lot. I have to wear these pants every day. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you did have your hand up. And in the front row, and then we'll go to you, and then we'll have to wrap it up soon.
With your kind of guerrilla style filmmaking, how did you get a distributor without having the proper paperwork?
Yeah, well, it's something I alluded to earlier, and it's something we're really afraid of. And the answer is that the film festival we played at Slamdance had this really amazing partnership with a legal firm. And I don't know how they had it, but it was one of these film festivals that would have like all kinds of little weird side deals with all kinds of people just to keep them in business. And one of them was with this firm that put up a prize for the winning movie, and the winning movie would get free legal representation, and it was like consultation. And it's crazy because it's the only film festival in the entire world I've ever heard of doing that, right? And if that hadn't been the prize that we'd won, then I don't know how this film would have been released, because this lawyer took it upon himself as like a personal mission to just clear everything or to get fair use allowances for every single piece of copywritten material in the movie, which we were so ignorant of. And I remember, Miller, do you remember what the bill that he sent us at the end was? It was like he just wanted to show us what the amount of legal work he did was. But what was it for? Do you remember?
The prize was $5,000 of legal services. And then they kept track of the billings, and then he was done, and he sent us a bill for like $72,000.
Yeah.
and it like came in an email, and I was like, and then he called me like right away, and he's like, that's a joke. But no, for next time, that's what it's going to cost you.
Yeah, so we had $72,000 of free legal services, and the answer is complicated, like in terms of how this happens, because it's a legal procedure, or it's a legal mechanism called fair use that covers all this stuff, and that really is not worth getting into unless you yourself are a filmmaker who's trying to do this stuff. Releases from people? Here's a great thing that we learned about releases from people, okay? And this really is true. I mean, you need to have a lawyer that's going to basically tell you that you're fine. But for non-speaking parts, or for people that you put on camera in a resonant way, like they're on camera and that's just where you happen to be shooting, so long as you aren't really focusing on them or making a statement about them, you don't need to get clearances for any of them. And a lot of people do this anyway because like big business is so paranoid about getting sued by anybody. But for us, like we had no assets, it was like this is barely a risk. And so for the most part, like when we're shooting in schools, none of those, we don't have releases for any of those people. We would get them when we could, and Matt Miller was really smart. Like he would always have somebody, whether it was him or somebody else, with like one-page releases that we could get people to sign if something happened. Those two kids at the beginning of the film, he hunted them down like high school to high school, wearing a big black jacket that went all the way down to his feet, and a hat with a big brim, with a photo of them inside the coat. And he found them. But he got releases from them, but otherwise it was get what you can, and lawyers will sort out the rest. And not in like a, they'll hunt down these people, but they'll create a framework whereby you don't need that stuff. Because the great thing about art is that the system is set up so that artists can do risky stuff generally. And so if you have a compelling reason to do what you do, like really compelling, like I'm making a movie about the Ninja Turtles, and like it's super important that the Ninja Turtles are a part of this movie, and you can really make a case for why you need to show this kid who's obsessed with the Ninja Turtles, then as a society, really that's good. It's like, okay, let this person do this, because maybe this story is going to be important to people and it will move the dial in terms of art in this country, right? And so the legal system actually views it that way, which is really amazing. If you can't create an argument, a creative argument for why you're doing something, then you can't get it cleared. Then you're just a hack. Like, nobody will help you. But if you have a compelling reason to do it, then there's a good chance you also have a legal reason.
I was gonna say maybe Ninja Turtles is the third film.
No. Owen's not a Ninja Turtles fan, believe it or not. He does not like the Turtles. What's funny about it? Yeah, why don't you like Ninja Turtles?
We had a question, yes.
Saved
Saved
by the Bell.
A lot has happened since you made this film. I don't mean to get dark on the last question, but
It's not dark at all.
there have been like a lot of shootings. And
Let me
part
tell you
of
something.
that-
This movie came out a few weeks after Sandy Hook, right?
Damn.
Like that was the world premiere. And so, however many shootings have happened since then, not to diminish it, but it was like all anybody wanted to talk about at that time. And at that, like it was on the front page of the newspaper. What I've actually found has happened since then, and this is a sick like byproduct of the news cycle in North America, is that now it seems like school shootings or violence in schools is so much more meaningless to the average person than it was at the time that we made this film. I'm completely interrupting your question, so please finish, but that was certainly,
That's interesting.
just to give it the context, like we did a screening in Toronto that we almost canceled, like, and it was just for our friends. We did a big screening at the Royal, and we were like, we can't do this screening because Sandy Hook just happened, and there's no way that we can justify it. But we went ahead with it and then premiered the movie. But but I can tell you, in terms of the palpable feeling of what was important, that was the most important thing on people's minds, at least in the sphere around us. And to compare it to now is like...
It would have been like doing a movie about assassinating a world leader and then a plane getting shot down. Like, really?
Yes!
But that's not a joke. Like, it felt like...
Yes.
It was the only thing that was in the papers.
And what's strange is that now, so many things seem like they're such insane hot-button issues and are so, I won't say politically incorrect, but so like, you can't even talk about it, or it's so too soon. And there's so many of those things that as individual things, they're so diminished in terms of their overall power. Whereas back then, it was like the thing. That and it's like bullying, it seemed like were big deals. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I mean, as much as you talk about it being improvised and figuring it out as it goes, it's clear that you thought it out to a certain extent. And something that came across as really interesting to me is that the characters, and I'm guessing also yourselves, are big fans of very particular genres of film. And it comes across in the film as a very direct criticism of those styles.
Or like a cause and effect
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
and that's been a big part of the discussion as well. Like, how does violence in film and in media get funneled into these very direct narratives that then come alive in really violent ways? And I just would like to hear what you have to say about that and what it means now, so many years later.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's funny. This was more, I would say, the number one question that I got asked when I was going to film festivals with this movie. Far and away. Nothing even came close, except for how much of that was improvised. But the take that I had at that time was, because I had to repeat this answer so often, was that nobody on this film team believes that there is a direct cause and effect between violent media and violent people. And again, who knows what reality is, but for us, our belief was that obviously the people who are violent, antisocial, and have these types of delusions of grandeur would be gravitating to this type of work, right? Heroizing themselves and giving themselves such incredible narrative power through media. That's something that I experience in my own life, and I think all of us do to an extent in other realms, right? You're not thinking, oh, I'm so angry and I'm so bitter, and I'm going to find a way to channel that through this narrative or the narrative of some hero or some villain in some movie. But I think that's why people love stories in movies, because they use it as a way to put themselves through these situations. But when I think about it now, and the relationship between even video games, I remember recently after some shooting, Walmart took all the violent video games off the shelves. This was like within a year of today. And to me, if people are watching this movie and thinking that is what we're trying to say about media in general, I think that's unfortunate, because clearly this is a guy who more than anything is trying to turn himself into a movie character, right? He's trying to turn himself into like the hero of his own story, more than he is trying to turn himself into a specific murderer because of some media he ingested. And the concept of like the hero or like a story leading you somewhere, that's never going away, right? People are always going to view themselves as the stars of their own films. And this guy just took that to such an insane level that he went and did these things. But I don't subscribe at all to the fact that the content of the media that he's consuming is leading to that stuff. Because in the same breath that this guy is saying that he loves, I'm trying to think of the most violent movie that you can tell, like, well, Pulp Fiction, like Quentin Tarantino movies, he also has like Wag the Dog posters on his wall. Like, this is somebody who just loves the power of cinema generally, and of media generally. And I don't get the sense when I'm playing this guy or when I'm watching him that what he's loving or what he's getting any type of power from is the violence in any of this work. What he's getting power from is the narrative potential from all
People were
of this
afraid
work.
of the Joker when it came out.
Yes.
Right? So it's like still a very relevant issue.
Big time. And what's funny is one of this guy's impressions is of the Heath Ledger Joker, flipping a knife in his hand and being like, I'm so badass. Yeah, I think that in many ways, I hope this isn't offensive, but that is like really almost like meaningless pearl clutching society being like, oh my God, this is so bad. I do not believe that there are people out there who are Manchurian candidates just waiting to see Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker to be activated and then go and kill people. I think that there are extremely antisocial, dysregulated people who are seeking out all kinds of media that's going to confirm their worldview. And I mean, I feel the same way about guns and this movie's stance, whatever, on gun control, and that's that taking guns away from people who are violently ill and really do want to hurt people is maybe helping the people that they would shoot, but really doing a disservice to those individuals who are completely broken and need help. And it's kind of like I don't want to say an easy solution because it'd be very difficult to do, but that's not the human solution, right? Like, Matt in this movie needs help, right? And he needs somebody to say, you're okay, you're all right, and you're worth something. And just taking away all of his abilities to hurt people is not going to fix that problem for him at all. But you're right, this was a very dark question to end this Q&A on, my God.
Okay, do you have the DVD?
Oh, do I have it? Yeah. Oh yeah, I have the last Dirties DVD, but it's in my coat back there. We were gonna give it away in some kind of trivia question, but I don't even know what to do. Maybe can we ask, what kind of Dirties trivia question can we ask to give away the last, do you know?
I have to just think of the Dirties.
Have you seen the Dirties?
No.
Man. Yeah, oh.
Do they know who made the credit sequence?
No, of course not.
I'll tell you. Shout out to the guy who made the credits.
Yeah, you know what? No, I can't. This is actually not a responsible thing to do. To come up with a competition on the fly, enact it, and then watch what happens, because who knows the chaos that would ensue. But I do have this DVD, and I will give it away to somebody who answers the following question as fast as possible. No, just kidding. But I will say that if you have other questions, I feel like these Q&As always end right at the time when certain people are like, thank God, get me the hell out of here, but also other people are like, oh man, I didn't really get to ask my question. But if you do, Owen and I and the entire team are still here, and we'd be happy to talk to you. I think all of our stuff is gone in terms of things that Miller was trying to sell, but we'll be happy to stay and talk and answer any questions you have. And thank you so much for coming. When they first said that they were going to do this, I was like, why would you do that? It's not even like an anniversary. Like, that movie's such a joke. Nobody cares about that. I was kicking the ground. I was alone at home at the time. And to see that there are this many people who are interested in seeing this, I know a lot of you have seen this before, but is so meaningful, because I can't tell you how, when we made this, we were thinking, oh, let's make a movie that we would really like. And when I say we, I'm talking about the 5 of us. And nobody else. We weren't showing it to anybody. We were like, we could make a movie that's about our own lives that maybe we would think is funny, and it never, ever got more serious than that. And to see how many people since it's come out have been like, that movie meant something to me. People I've never met, people from a completely different part of the world who have a completely different life than me, has been unbelievable, and the best lesson in terms of the power of stories, because we had no idea that people would follow this film and think it was interesting at all. And I'll never forget being at the back of the room at the Slam Dance Film Festival with Owen with our eyes closed as the movie was screening, thinking, oh my God, what a disaster. And then hearing people starting to laugh. And then all of a sudden, everybody stopped laughing. It was totally quiet, and we felt like, oh wow, people really get these guys. And there was, that feeling has not left me. It hasn't left me. And yeah, it was the most profound thing that ever happened to me in my entire life, and it's because of you. So thank you so much for being here. I mean it. And again, we'll be around for a while. So thank you so much. And thank you